Greetings and good Wednesday morning, 24th of May. It's already the 24th of May, but it's still 2023, third decade of the 21st century. I apologize if I got the eye boogers and whatnot. I still got to get ready for work and whatnot. But with that being said, the reason I'm getting this video out there is because I have a response. And as promised, I always like to read, react, and respond to my videos. And if you're new to my channel, if it's your first time, I always like to open up by identifying not just the date, but that the fact that it's the third decade of the 21st century to kind of sort of give us some focus, as in what sort of things are we talking about? What sort of things are popular in the zeitgeist versus where extremely educated, smart people thought we would be and what we'd be discussing and whatnot. So without further ado, let me go ahead and read, react, and respond to my one and loyal viewer who does take the time to respond, and hope nobody takes offense to that. Just Stace has been the one person for in excess of a year, crap, Stace, I think we're going on 2 years now, who does actually respond to my videos. We canceled our cable and we spend as much on the services we actually watch. We also have, so if I understand that, Stace, you're saying that what you were spending on cable, you are now spending on the streaming services. So if your cable was $100 a month, now you're spending $100 a month on streaming services. I think that's what you're saying, but you'll correct me if I'm wrong. We also have Spectrum as well due to our apartment complex. Joss's issue wasn't the only problematic person at the WBCW, because One Tree Hill had a toxic work environment as well. You know, so funny enough, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned this as well, big fan of the Michael Rosenbaum podcast, Inside of You, and he had Sophia Bush on the podcast, who is just gorgeous. And I read this last night, Stace, and I've been thinking about it because it's the opportunity to get full-blown meta is crazy. So One Tree Hill I actually watched. I was in my late 20s, so I wasn't so far removed from high school that I couldn't kind of sort of remember and relate. Not to mention I was always aware that they've got young 20-something-year-olds playing teenagers. But let's focus on that for a minute, not me watching the show. So you have a show creator, I forget his name, but essentially, aside from a catchy hook with the story, he's essentially selling sex. He's got really, really attractive cast members. I'm assuming the guys were as attractive as the women, because like Hillary Burton, Sophia Bush, Danielle Ackles, back then it was something else. And then I think Haley, whatever. So there was no shortage of extremely attractive women on the show. However, pause for dramatic effect, while they were technically of legal age to be women, and I'm not talking like 18, 19, I'm talking like in their 20s, they were playing teenagers. So try to put that into perspective. Okay, so as somebody watching the show, ooh la la, but you're getting all hot and bothered over teenagers. Remove the fact that they're adults playing teenagers. If you're going with the story, if you're indulging in the fantasy, they're teenagers. So I've been thinking about that since last night. I'm like, is that weird? Is that wrong? Is it dirty? Is it all the things? Worse than that, the show creator, all right? And this is where like I went down the rabbit hole. The guy who created the show, who's selling sex, who created this toxic work environment according to Sophia Bush, and I don't know if anybody else has recently commented on it. But he's selling sex and he wants these sexy characters. I don't know if he was a nerd. I don't know if he was mistreated in high school. All the things, right? He's essentially selling teenage sex. That's his whole shtick, is aside from the story, that was pretty good in the beginning. When they decided to do that jump ahead 4 years after college, that's when I was kind of like, what just happened? And that's when my wife and I stopped watching it. He's essentially selling underage sex, essentially. Now, once I was able to kind of get over all of that, which is kind of jarring, I tried to wrap my head around it just a little bit. And I'm not saying that I'm defending it. I'm not saying that I'm advocating for it, but I tried to wrap my head around it, as in, part of your show's premise, in order to reach a multifaceted audience, right? So you theoretically have good-looking guys and you have good-looking girls. Now, I don't know if he held the same standard for the guys, if he had a female version of himself, a producer or whatever, that held the guys to a standard, you know, making sure that they had visible abs. I don't know. But from what I remember of the Inside of You podcast with Sophia Bush, was that the creator of the show had like a pinup wall, and he demanded photos of all the girls in like bikinis or lingerie or something in that same vein, where I understand if you're trying to maintain the image, but the one thing I've learned is that multiple things can be true. He can be perceived as creepy. He can be perceived as a lot of things. Also, he could be getting a lot of pressure from above him on, hey, look, this is what we want. You want to tell your story, well, we want this in exchange. So I'm just leaving the door open to possibility, right? I'm not suggesting this is what happened. But hypothetically, what if a standard was being demanded of him, so now he's got to go and be the bad guy? I say that because one of the things we had to deal with in the military that was very unpopular was, as you progress in rank, as you reach certain levels, one of the hardest things that I had to learn how to do was, I sit in a meeting and I hear the plan, or whatever the case may be, and there's an opportunity for me to, well, you know, what about this, or I don't know about that. If the opportunity's there and it's appropriate, you also have to know when it's appropriate, when it's not. And ultimately, if it gets shut down, you have to be able to walk away and be like, okay. And then when you go in front of your subordinates, you also have to sell it like it's your idea and you're married to the idea. And that sucked. And I don't know, what if hypothetically, the creator, you know what, I'm going to pause this and look this guy up. All right, so it says here it was written and created by Mark Schwann. Let me see if there's anything else. David Handelman, Johnny Richardson, Mike Hero. Okay, looks like there was a lot of dudes on that. Okay, roger that. So Mark Schwann, I don't know if he was receiving a lot of pressure from the CW network to sell sex and demand sexiness of his characters. I think Sophia Bush also had talked about going through some other stuff where she may have been hypersensitive, or it could be exactly what it was. He you know, was maybe somebody who was less than popular, couldn't get girls like that to talk to him. Now he's got, you know, some iota of authority and power, and he's taking advantage to basically relive his high school fantasies and live vicariously through his position. And maybe he was a creep, maybe he was a jerk. And then it brings me back full circle. The whole shtick of that, and it's not the first time, it's really not, but because I'm responding to your comment, Stace, while it's not the first time, it's not the first show, and it won't be the last, it just made me think that, you know, at that point in time, I was like, oh yeah, look at these gorgeous looking women who were also age appropriate to look at. I hadn't progressed enough in age, like you and I had talked before. Well, we had conversed in some way, shape, or form about how, you know, babysitting and whatnot, age appropriate, where I'm looking at these girls, but in essence, what I'm looking at is a high school girl, and it just kind of hit me like, I was pushing 30 going, ooh. I mean, granted, these girls were all old enough to buy alcohol at the time, but that's not the point. The point is, I was like, ooh, you know, pretty. And they're supposed to be teenage high school girls, and I don't know why that just hit me weird. Funny how the brain works, right? That was the direction I went in, you know, where you just wanted to mention the toxic work environment, and all of a sudden I'm like, hang on a second, this guy is basically somewhere in his late 20s, early 30s, selling a show with teenage sex. And it's like, I began watching this show, at least for the first 4 seasons, where it was teenage sex, and it's just kind of like, and part of me is like, well, you know, hang on, all of the young ladies that were sexy are age appropriate. You know, you don't have, it's not like they're so young that it's like, ugh, you know, like, for a while my wife and daughter were into Riverdale, which was supposed to be the live action Archie comics, and there are some rather attractive young female actors on the show, and they may or may not be of age to consent to being objectified and being sexy, but I'm at an age where I could have fathered them. That, yeah, hey, some of you out there, it's not a problem. For some of you out there, hey, get down with your bad self. You know, age is just a number. But for me, yeah, age has something to do with it. And I was just watching Steven Crowder not too long ago, and they were talking about like Bill Gates and some 22-year-old mistress, and Steven Crowder's co-host Gerald was like, that even violates the half plus 7 rule. And I was like, half plus 7? I was like, all right, well, let's see that. I'm 47. Divide that in half. That's 23 and a half. Add 7. That's 30 and a half. 30 and a half. That's 1992, 1993. Can't do it. Can't do it. I think if I ever had to, I could probably go I don't know, that's hard to say, because I'm 47, so 37's not that big of a deal. But 36, 35, you know, 11, 12, I don't know. My first sister was born when I was 12, and I remember changing her diapers, so could I date, if I had to, could I date somebody my sister's age, 35? I don't know. But thank God I don't have to worry about that right now. So here's the deal. I'm not big into this. This isn't my income. I'm not monetized, at least not that I'm aware of. So there's no paywall for me. If you leave a comment, I promise I will read, react, and respond. I like to do some nerdy, geeky stuff, whether it's sci-fi, fantasy, what have you. And then I also do a little bit of socio-political stuff. So, you know, if you want to throw a comment out there about the potential socio-political ramifications, the Me Too, or if you want to get full-blown meta, because of how small my channel is, if you leave a comment, I promise I will read, react, and respond to it. And if nothing else, my channel's like for the little people, because I can't necessarily afford to get behind everybody's paywall. So with that in mind, if you do leave a comment, I appreciate it. You're awesome. Till next time, please stay safe out there.